At this time, with the danger that terrorism presents and China, North Korea, and Iran present, I would be reluctant to cut the defense budget. As far as other federal budgets are concerned, I would be in favor of severely cutting the Federal Department of Education. As a constitutional matter, I don't think we should have a Federal Department of Education. I've served on a local board of education way back in the 80s, and I've always considered education to be a local or neighborhood issue, not a federal issue. So the Federal Department of Education is something I'd like to cut. There's another federal agency that really gets me going, and that is the Department of Energy. We've all followed the Solyndra scandal and all of these green energy companies that are in the tank, and they just happen to have been donors to President Obama. So there's tremendous waste, fraud, abuse in the Department of Energy. I think the Energy Secretary should be fired for incompetence. So education and energy are two federal departments that I think can really be cut back on, really be trimmed substantially.
Okay, this next question, my name is Kendall Svengalis, and this next question is for seat number 4. What is your position on the Affordable Health Care for America Act, known as Obamacare? Would you focus on repealing the act in its entirety, or would you try to defund it or amend it?
I'd repeal it.
Yeah. All right.
And next question.
Okay. Enough said.
My question, Ms. Daria, looks like it's you. Would you support legislation requiring all laws must cite in the Constitution, where in the Constitution it derives its authority?
Yes.
Care to embellish?
We have to go back to the Constitution, that's the reality. And right now, government has gone so far away from what the original founding fathers wanted for this nation that we have a big job ahead of us to pull it back. When you see our president defining the Interstate Commerce Clause as being able to regulate the inactivity of American citizens, we know things have gone too far. So I think what we need to do is to start by getting back to basics. And one of the ways is looking at what the role of the federal government is, what the role of Congress is, and basically saying, should we be doing this? Because right now, I don't think Congress thinks that anything is outside of its purview.
Dan Reale, in view of America's tremendous national debt, $15.6 trillion, should we continue giving foreign aid to over 125 countries?
No. I certainly would. While foreign aid is obviously a huge waste to the point of us giving military equipment to numerous militaries, not just Israel, but a whole bunch of them, the generals on the ground say, what am I going to do with this? Where am I going to put it? I mean, I already have 2 gas masks for every soldier. But aside from that, it really touches on an important point. We have a serious spending problem right now. And this is something that I hope we address here at this forum in more considerable detail should the opportunity arise, and it's this. Right now, we're not paying, hardly any debt service on the national debt. But if there was a event that would cause the rest of the world to say, you know what, America, you're entirely irresponsible. Instead of 0%, you're going to pay 6%. I'm not sure if anybody's looked at this issue, but if we were to go from 0% interest rate on what we pay for our debt to 6%, that would immediately slice into Medicare and Social Security by the tune of $400 billion. Now, that would completely start to eclipse defense spending, and it would cause an absolute meltdown. So obviously, forget the several hundred billion in foreign aid. I mean, it would just really cut into everything. So we're at this point where we have to take a serious look at our healthcare system as well. Obviously, we can't take programs like Medicare and say, we're going to write a blank check, for any kind of service or product. We can't say we're going to provide all sorts of subsidies to Medicaid and Medicare and say, oh, by the way, you don't have to post your prices. That's part of what we have really going on. And the big issue, I think, is the entitlement and defense spending going on. It's not necessarily foreign aid, but yes, I would be for eliminating it entirely because we're, not at war.
Next question is for number table 7. Yeah, for Shays. What should the federal government do to strengthen the national economy and create jobs?
It's got to do a number of things. It's first got to take a hard and deep look at the Federal Reserve. It needs to audit the Federal Reserve. It needs to understand why the summer before TARP, it had given literally trillions of dollars to banks to increase their bottom line, allowing them to take this money and then buy government bonds, which the government then had to pay them. We need to stabilize the dollar, and I think we have to tie it to some level of gold, maybe about 400. We've seen it go back and forth. The reason why gas prices are so high today, obviously you increase more supply, but even if you did that, it's on a world economy. It's a world price, and it's based on the dollar. And the dollar has gotten so weakened that the price of gas is that much higher. We need to balance the budget within the next 6 years, and I pledge to do that. We need to look at all entitlements. I separate Social Security. We will then have to look at Social Security to say, what do we do to make sure it's there for our children? But we need to be encouraging the development of our energy resources. Our energy resources will be a gold mine to this country, because it's going to lower energy costs, so our energy costs will be the cheapest in the world. And you are going to see American industry grow and flourish as a result of the fact that no part of the world will be able to compete with us. We have the workers, we have the technology, we have the resources, and then we've got to simplify our tax code, and we've got to rid ourselves of the regulations that are stifling economic growth.
This next question is for Peter Lumaj. The Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of a people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What does that mean to you?
That means that the intent of the Second Amendment is very clear, that we have the right to, not the right by the Constitution to bear arms, but is a natural right. That right existed prior to the Constitution. Any government, there are two kinds of, if you look at the criminals and the government, I'm not going to compare them to each other.
Seems impossible.
The criminals love to find victims who are unarmed, and dictators love people that are disarmed. I've seen that movie where people were disarmed, and then we had a dictatorship that oppressed us for 60 years, and we couldn't do anything. And the founding fathers were very, very clear with the intent that, yes, you have the right to be armed and defend yourself, and if need be, even against the government, if it goes to the point that it becomes a dictatorship. So that's the intent of the Second Amendment. And I support it completely, 100%. I'm not armed tonight, so.
And this will be the last question in this round, and what a lucky boy am I, I got those ladies. So, I'll have to go play the lotto or something to see. Do you believe that Social Security and Medicare are in financial trouble? And if so, what would you do to strengthen them?
Well, they clearly are in trouble. We know that they're not sustainable at their current rate. There are a lot of ways that we could look at strengthening Social Security. I do think that we're going to have to do it in a bipartisan way. You know, there are suggestions on the table, you know, that range from raising, you know, the retirement age, you know, to other methods, to means testing, to other things. And I think that we're going to have to do that in a bipartisan fashion in Congress. We cannot continue, you know, doing things the way we are doing with Social Security. We're just simply going to be bankrupt. And I do believe that there are ways to look at, you know, what were we trying to do when we put Social Security in place? We didn't go back and review it.
In other words, I believe in sunset provisions when we pass this kind of legislation, so that you take a look at it 10, 15 years down the road to make sure that it's still going to fund itself. Social Security will run out of money if we continue to do what we're doing. And we've robbed the trust fund. If we think there's any money there, there's not, but there are, there certainly are, our securities based, backed by the federal government. However, Medicare is, again, going to go bankrupt if we don't change it. There have been recommendations of block grants of our seniors looking at choosing what kind of plans they want, but I can tell you one thing I would not do. I would not vote on any law or rule that would take away the benefits that our seniors have today or those that are approaching retirement age, because they're there. They're counting on those benefits. We have to find another way to pay for it other than impacting our seniors today, and I would not vote for anything that would do that.